Guys, welcome again to my channel. I hope you're good. Uh, another update to my channel. I want to give you one more of the things that I enjoy. There will always be one more. So today I just want to talk about European history. I find European history very interesting. So what do I mean by European history? Growing up, but it's more like uh, out of sight, out of mind. If you've never seen it, if you don't know about it, you don't know it. So I used to think that Europe was this country, I mean, this continent, sorry. Actually, my understanding of Europeans was just one. Anybody who had, like, um, I didn't know there was a difference. Like, Britons look different from maybe Danish or Dutch. Like, for me, Europe was, if you grow in an African country, all whites are the same. All are the same. The only difference you might maybe hear is how they talk, but that's you don't concentrate that much about that. All you concentrate is their color. Um, and you see all of them like the same, just the way I think that's the same thing that white people see us as. Those people who have never come to Africa, they see all Africans the same, all black, all same hair, like all of us grow the same type of hair, all of us, like all of them see us the same. Most of them see us the same. And I think that was the same thing I used to see with Europeans. In fact, if you asked me, so probably I never knew there was a difference between, let's say, American versus European versus, I don't know. The only thing I used to know was the difference between, let's say, a Chinese and maybe a European. But for me, Europeans were the same. Okay. Indians, we know, like, there's a difference between Indians and Chinese. What else? Yeah. So I knew there was a difference between Indians, Chinese, and because Chinese, we all saw Chinese people in construction sites. So Chinese are the contractors and the people on construction sites. Probably still true. Indians are the businessmen, the people in the shops and in the supermarkets. Those are the Indians. Then the whites. This is interesting. I'm sorry if you don't like this explanation, but this is how I understood them. The whites are the people who come to children's homes, or to sport facilities to fund, I don't know, whatever, to fund schools, to donate to. If you are in a primary school, you probably saw a lot of this, depending on where you went to primary school. So in your school, you see one day you just called out by the principal to go to the field assembly or something like that. You see whites, and yeah, you're like, these are whites. And as a kid, probably this is a very interesting sight. You just wanted to see them. A lot of things are in your head, but I won't go there. I want to tell you of how I got to understand a different perspective of Europe. I got to understand a Europe that was fragile. Mark that point, okay? So my understanding of Europe as a continent, as a people, as this group of people, the Caucasians, I just understood them. They saw perfect race. These are perfect people. These are people who are just imperial. I think that's they did their job when it came to colonization. But I don't blame myself. I believe in the statement "out of sight, out of mind" very powerfully. I think that's a very powerful statement. It's true, because if you don't know it, if you don't know any better, that's all you know. So, for me, I just thought of this group of people as superior. They're just, I mean, they're not infallible. You know, these guys had superior technology, everything. They had a superior way of life. But my love for history showed me a different side of Europe, a Europe that was poor, a Europe that was once probably the poorest region around. I don't know. Like, I just saw a different side, an infallible Europe. Like, not infallible, a Europe that is faulty, like just like every other part of the world, or a group of people who were subject to the same problems that you're subject to. It's just that they went through some of those problems way back in their time or in their history. So I got to understand the history of Europe, the wars, the cultural intertwinement, you know, you have the Barbars, you have, I mean, the barbarians, you have the Germanic tribes, you have what else about Europe? You have a lot of conquering, like there was this conquer mentality, just go and take lands. I don't know where it started. Did it start in the Asian continent or did it start in Europe? But it it was a very large part of Europe. That is true for something like the Roman Empire. You can see the Ottoman Empire fed into that a little bit. Ottoman Empire, I don't know, it spread between Europe and the Middle East. Yeah, but the conquer mentality, like take lands and conquer them. So I think the heart of all of this was the Roman Empire. I think the Roman Empire was what can I say? Was it a condensation of a lot of what happened in Europe? You have a group of people like within the same system. I think it plays even today in modern society what Europe became. You have class systems, you have the ruling class, that is the politicians, that is the governors and whatever. There's the military, the commanders in chief and whatever, which was different. And I think this is where the idea of the rule of the republic as the commander in chief started, because a good number of the Roman generals or a good number of Roman commanders in chief or the chief soldiers or the head of the military, after conquering lands, became the emperors themselves. Someone like Julius Caesar is a good example. He was a military soldier, fought battles, conquered new lands, and he became an emperor. And yeah, so we have a Europe where you have slaves, you have gladiators who. It is very interesting. The Roman Empire itself is a. If you look at the Roman Empire contrasted to modern society, it's a very like a stark. Can I say stark? A stark. When I learned about that, it was a stark realization that we live off a lot of Roman civilization. So things like taxation, things like how we rule, things like the education system, a lot of things stem from the Roman Empire. But the short of it all is me understanding the developments of Europe, how Europe became this. Is it peninsula? Europe is more a peninsula, yeah, because that's how it's explained. Like it's more a peninsula, but within this peninsula, a lot of things happened. You had religious conquest. You had things like the Martin Luther, like the Protestant movement started by Martin Luther on Christianity. So I think the old rule was Orthodox Christianity. Then you had the Protestants, starting with Martin Luther, protest against that kind of Christian religion was the dominant religion in Europe, and it's very interesting how Europe was shaped by a lot of these things. Wars, first of all, wars is very later on, but I think wars have been a good part of the development of Europe's history. Um, what else? Culture. Europe generally is a condensation of different cultures coming together. So you have peoples from you see, disregarding borders, Europe generally is tied to Asia. It's just the borders and the lines that they've decided. But as a landmass, Europe and Asia is one thing. In fact, Europe, you can look at Europe as an extension of the Asian continent, as a peninsula. So yeah, Europe is the story of the developments of Europe is very interesting. Like Europe is like this small region with so much stories, and if you just account even for one of those stories, it's very interesting. So, for example, one of the stories is like the stories of colonization. This guy started with simple ambitions for exploration, and it came into a realization that they could use some of the resources that they found in distant lands to bring into their home country and commercialize them. Yes, Europe is Europe is the condensation of a lot of stories. And there's this channel. I don't remember the channel. Is it Get Factual or yeah, Get Factual History? I think that's the channel that I learned about this. And there's a whole um, like playlist of how Europe developed. And this showed me a very different side of Europe that is very interesting to me as a history buff. It's very interesting. Like this is the kind of thing that I like, just going down the rabbit hole on, because um, you show me something that I've never seen. You show me something that I've never understood. I like it. Another example, not another example, another thing that I like, just as the story of Europe, is like the story of America. America's story from a colonial state, or a colony of Britain and France, a little bit, because I think there were certain colonies, British colonies, then other colonies were by French. I don't know. Like it was a British. Uh, yeah, it was a British French rule in America. So like a division. So you have different colonies uh, owned by Britain, other colonies owned by France, and yeah, the story of America is very interesting. I learned this from the understanding of the story of Benjamin Franklin. My role model, that is Elon Musk. Um, I listen to him a lot, of course. So he mentioned this. He said about how one of the interesting books that he ever read was the story of Benjamin Franklin, the biography that is by, I think he mentioned the particular biography he read, because there are different biographies. There's his autobiography, and there's the biography done by Isaac. Is it Isaac? The famous biographer who has done, what is his name? He's done actually a biography of Elon Musk himself. Oh, Walter Isaacson. That's the name. Walter Isaacson. So Walter Isaacson did a biography of Benjamin Franklin, one of the founding fathers. Very interesting founding father of America. If you don't know who Benjamin Franklin is, if you know of the American note, is it the note called the Benji? I don't know which one it is. Is it the $20? Is it the $10 note? Is it the $100 note? Probably the 100. It has a face. I mean, it has a picture of him, Benjamin Franklin, of course, as like notes. Notes usually have faces, so the American, I think it's the $100 note, because a lot of a lot of like many times that money is flexed, it's the currency that has the picture of Benjamin Franklin. So I think it must be the $100 note. I'm not sure, but one of the American notes has his face on it, unless they have not changed. As long as they have not changed it, but I think yeah, it is there. A very interesting founding father. But back to Europe, we were talking about Europe. When I learn about these things, they just make me understand something different. I knew this story this way, and I believed it that way. And then I understand it this way, and now I see a different perspective. Like the story of religion, I've talked about colonization. It was one of the biggest stories of the developments of Europe. It's developments. We talked about it as a developed continent. It's developed countries, developed continent. Yeah, but you know countries don't stop developing. Like development is like always happening. uh I link it, or I try to think about it like the story of evolution, like it's always going on. Yeah. So the developments of Europe during the time of colonization were very huge. Capitalism developed or thrived during that time. um their political power developed. A lot of things happened during that time. Of course, the what is the name, standards of living of European citizens increased because a lot of capital was cycling within Europe. During the war period, that changed. That is the First and Second World Wars. Europe was the battlefield. That is the name. The battlefield of wars during the Second and First World Wars. Very cataclysmic wars. And yeah, wars that actually changed banking because a lot of banking was primed for war financing. There was the history of Europe as so I've talked about colonization. I've talked about colonization and war. A big one is religion. How Christianity became one of the leading religions around is not a coincidence. It's developments in Europe. So you have the Roman Empire, definitely the largest empire in Europe, the European continent. Um, this religion, I mean, this empire, this is how things become powerful. So the Roman Empire made a lot of things standard practice. So things like religion. So in the Roman Empire, the religion. So you know how empires worked. So you go and colonize different civilization, not different civilizations. Of course, we want civilization. You go and conquer different lands. These different lands have different cultures, different people who just do different things from the core. Like so, the Roman Empire, of course, started in Rome, Italy, but it spread into a good part of that region, the Mediterranean region. I think Greece was part of it, yeah. But the thing that was happening with empires is when they go and colonize the regions. So the thing that still happened with colonization, it's the same model, different styles. I mean, different times, the same model. You can't colonize these people, and they have to assimilate or adopt your systems. They have to take in. So maybe they can keep some of their practices, but they have to fully like become for them to become citizens. That was the name. That was the thing. For them to become citizens, they have to be fully. They have to fully adopt your way of living, your culture, the food. Like even the money. The money was a significant aspect. They have to use your money because the Roman emperor will collect taxes, and these taxes have to fund the empire's whatever its acquisitions. An empire is huge. It needs to be financed. And taxes were the major source of funding, and that sounds very, very similar to today. Taxation, yeah. So they have to get funding. The Roman Empire, I mean emperor, of course, the leader of the empire, has to get funding from taxes, and taxes need to be uniform. For taxes to be uniform, everyone has to be using this currency. Everyone in this empire has to be using this currency. So that is the assimilation aspect of currency playing into people's lives. They have to assimilate almost everything, including currency that you're using in this empire. So if they were using a different currency, they stop using the currency. If you had a leader in this society or whatever this community, this leader has to report to the Roman emperor. So you had the system of governors. So I think most of these conquered states or these conquered nations were converted. So even the rulers became governors, or they worked in under the regime of the emperor, whether as politicians, whatever. But it was full assimilation, taking everything, the system of dressing, the system of feeding, especially the political systems, everything they were taking up of the empire. So religion was a big part. Or I've talked about many things, but I was talking about religion. Religion was a big part of the things they have to assimilate, because if you don't, other empires actually run a different way, but the Roman Empire, a big part of it was, I think there was an enforcement of. I might not be getting the story right, but I know it was not a coincidence that the largest empire in Europe, created the largest religion, and that was not a coincidence. In fact, the Crusades were also a demonstration of that. The Crusades were meant to convert most people. I think the Crusades were against Muslims or other pagans or whatever. But I believe the Roman Empire had a lot to do with making Christianity one of the most dominant religions around. So yeah, the history of Europe is very interesting. I think I learned a lot from learning European history in this manner, learning about different aspects of how Europe has grown from when Europe was a poor region, because Europe was once poor. A time when Europe was the majority of the peoples in Europe were farmers. The middle class were farmers. Yeah, that's a very telling thing. Like if the majority are farmers, so they rely on subsistence farming compared to today's economy. It's a very modern economy where people don't rely on farming. It's more production of value. As long as you provide value. Back then, food was everything, and the production capacity was very limited. So yeah, but right now we have very unlimited production capacity. We have specialization, exchange of goods and services amongst people, money being a common factor. Yes, we have come very, very long. I mean, we have come very far from the roots of the developments of countries like Europe. And now that I'm talking about the developments of Europe, I think learning about Europe in this way gave me hope, in a sense. I don't know what it does to you, but it gave me hope in a sense that we usually see African countries in this light, corrupt, backward. But I think we've just not had the time to develop. You know, we're still a young peoples in light of civilization. We have had very few, like a very short time to actually explore these things. If you talk about, let's just start with democracy. A country like America has experienced democracy for 250 years, if I'm not wrong, plus or minus, but very 200 years plus. Let me put it at that. Yeah, Europe has experienced democracy for longer. You had the Greeks developing democracy, it being implemented very strongly during the Roman Empire. You had what else did you have? And that's many years. Like that's more than 300, 400 years of development. And with that time, what happens generally is you generally become better. You know, it's evolution, and it happens slowly but regularly, and over time it just becomes better. You know, people do things, they see the effects of what they're doing, then they become very strong, like willed to advocate for change, or people become leadership becomes more serious. You know, generally, like, people are just tired of like mediocrity and they want change. And if you look at the stories of uh, say something like France, there was this case where the France monarchy was criticized by the subjects. I think what was the name? There was the French queen. I think it must have been the time of Napoleon Bonaparte. Was it the okay? I might not remember her name, but she was the one who said, "If you cannot afford bread, buy cake." And you know, when you say that, when citizens are very angry and they don't have anything, they're pushed to the wall. You know, they're almost at the point of hunger. They have nothing to lose at that point, and that causes or starts revolution. And revolutions are very hard to stop if they start, and you can only do so much as leadership to try and stop them. All you can do is just allow them to give them the change that they want, and I think that gives me hope. You know, maybe it might take a long time, but I'm more relaxed in my heart knowing that Europe didn't get where it did in a day. It didn't get where it did in year or 10 years or 20 years now. In fact, in light of civilization, 20 years is, I don't know, a dot. Like, it's very small. You look at how countries have become powerful. Uh, yeah, powerful, you can become powerful in 20 years, 100 years. Like, that's the timeline, you know. Look at America. America has done what they've done in, like, getting independence in 1779, is it? Yeah, 1779. You have like 200 years, but it's in hundreds of years. You see, it's in centuries. You know, civilization. I think century is the smallest timeline you can talk about. So it gives me hope that however bad off we are still young. You know, we in the like timeline of civilization, we look like kids. We don't know what we're doing. We're just doing things and we're exploring. We're learning. And yes, you know, we can say, why don't we look at Europe, my friend? You know, it's more compound effect than what we can do, because we can try to do it, but if everyone doesn't understand the general value in what is being done, it won't happen. But if we develop slowly over time, we'll get there. But I also think I lost the idea of trying to control things. You know, just let things happen in their own time. You know, civilization has a way of just doing its thing. I think we'll get there. Yeah, but I might not be there to see us getting there. But it's quite like helpful to know that we have a very powerful subcontinent or continent. Europe is not actually a continent; it's a peninsula. But anyway, it's a continent, as they say. You have this powerful continent in the name of politics, in the name of finance, in the name of economics, in the name of whatever. They're powerful in very many ways. In other words, you are more powerful than them, but it doesn't matter. Whoever is powerful is powerful. But they've not done it in a day. Not done it in a day. And they've not done it in years, not in decades, it's in centuries. Okay? So yeah, maybe I might not be live long enough to do that. But it just gives me hope, you know. You can be as vulnerable as you are. They started somewhere and they were low, below the the bottom of the they were where we are right now, but back then, like, it was some very many years back, and there's been years of development, and a lot has changed since those years or since those days, and centuries of developments and wars and whatever. Europe is a land that, if you look at today, you can't know that this is a land that was the center stage for the worst wars that have ever happened in the world, the center stage for some of the most interesting discoveries that have ever happened. But it's collective human effort, you know. It's not like one person doing a great thing and that's done. It's collective human effort, collaboration, unity of thought. Like, you look at something like the scientific revolution, one of the pinnacle or one of the peak demonstrations of Europe's abilities, or what it has been able to do. The scientific revolution was a good part of it. It's a very interesting part of it, and it was a group of scientists just budding up every corner of Europe. You have England at the time, I think, was with the Royal Society, was the center stage of this whole thing, scientific revolution. You had the Russians, you had the Swedes, you had the Scottish, I mean, that was a wonderful thing in my view, because it has first of all, developed science, developed technology, um, brought us some wonderful powers that we wouldn't have if we didn't have that period. And I think history doesn't choose, civilization doesn't choose. Anything can happen anywhere at any time. So yeah, at the end of it, I think what I can say is it gives me hope. Um, and I think let time do its thing. We'll get there, and giving ourselves also like we're like children in this game of civilization. We're like children. It's not like we have not been there for all those years. It's just that this modern civilization thing, we're new to it. That's all. But in other things, we were probably more advanced than them. It's just that they brought to us a system that we now have to understand, a new system. A system that most countries have understood for, some have understood for 10 years, some of a country like South Sudan, maybe only 20 years. South Sudan is 2011, that is how many years? And they're still in war, 2011 to 26, that is like 15 years, is it? Yeah, 15 years of independence, own rule. That's a very small timeline. Our country, like 60 years. 60 years in the timeline of civilization is very small. Other countries, most countries in, okay, a country like Ethiopia, never colonized, but still uses a lot of European systems because they have taken it from other countries. But the long short of it is we are still young in this game of civilization. And my understanding of Europe gave me a second perspective of Europe, not just seeing Europe as this place that just got there. They were just put on this land and they were there. No, these people were once poor as we are, probably even poorer. These people were once they were once in the same problems that we were. They experienced what we experience in ghettos, like slums, whatever. The Jews have experienced some of the worst of. Some people say that the Jews are almost like Africans in a way, in terms of how they have been mistreated. But yeah, that the long short of it is, it gives me hope that we'll get there. We'll get there. It's interesting. Thank you once again for joining. This is history with me. History is interesting. I don't know. Like, this is one of the things that can just go on and on and on. It's interesting. Anyway, see you next time. Peace.